Welcome to Create If Writing, the podcast for writers and creatives dealing with the passion and the practice behind making good art. I'm Kirsten Oliphant, your host, and you can find more at createifwriting.com. Before I dive into the really excellent interview with Ed Cyzewski, I wanted to take a moment to do some housekeeping things. First of all, if you've been a listener of the show, you may have realized that there was a 2-week break where I did not put out any episodes. Here's what happened. In short, my Mac died a slow, horrible, painful death and took all my files with it. The Mac store was unable to recover things and gave me a business card for a company that would charge $1,000 to possibly get things off. It was quite devastating. However, I have a Mac Ninja friend who is able to use some kind of superpower and get things off the computer and get things back up and running. Lesson learned, back up your computer, people. Then I actually recorded a podcast episode about that very thing, about having obstacles and overcoming them and backing up your computer. But a technical glitch destroyed that as well. So I have been just getting it all over the place with technology the last 2 weeks. It's also summer, which means all 4 kids are home with me. And honestly, the podcast might become more of a twice a month thing until my kids get back in school. It's just crazy at this point in time. So thank you for bearing with me. I don't like to be inconsistent, but sometimes life happens. Life always happens, actually. I don't know why people say sometimes life happens. Life always happens, but sometimes you're unable to do things like a weekly podcast because of the life that is happening. The other quick thing I wanted to mention is a giant thank you to Josh Mills of Unbroken for doing the music for this podcast. I often thank him at the end, but I'm not sure people listen to that, and he's listed in the resources page on the blog, createifwriting.com. But I wanted to give Josh a special shout out because he doesn't even do music for podcasts. He is a musician and answered the frantic call that I put out that I needed some music for this podcast, and I was so happy with what he did. So anyway, big shout out to Josh. Thank you so much. Just love your music and admire it, and I'm so thankful that you did this for the show. It's wonderful. So I'm linking to Josh and Unbroken Light I'll do it in the show notes, but it's also on my resource page. Now, I want to get into the interview with Ed Cyzewski, who is a writer and has done both commercial or traditional publishing and independent publishing. So he has a great sort of overall view of the publishing landscape right now and has some really good, I don't know if I want to say he's got tips, but he shares his experience. And also he has some really good ideas for social media and promotion and making connections. In fact, that's how Ed and I actually first connected, was on Twitter, which we talk about in the interview. So without further ado, I hope you enjoy this interview with Ed Cyzewski and glean lots of great things from it. Well, in this episode of Create If Writing, I'm talking with Ed Cyzewski. How are you doing, Ed?
Doing great. Thanks for having me.
I don't actually remember how Ed and I connected, but it was somehow through social media, right? Do you even know?
Twitter. It was Twitter.
Twitter. Okay.
Yeah.
Twitter has become, it's weird. It was one of my least favorite social media platforms, but it's become my favorite because I've connected with so many people through it. That was just very unexpected. So yeah, thanks Twitter. Thanks for that. Because Ed is a phenomenal writer, blogger, and I would like to say, can I call you a hustler? Is that offensive? I mean, in the good online way, of course, but I feel like you've got that good bit of hustle in there as well as a writer.
Hard worker?
Yes, we can use that if that's better. Okay. It doesn't sound as like, it wouldn't fit on a business card as well, but hey, it's your business card. You're a hard worker. So
I had like a B logo, with a pen.
Yes, yeah,
it's coming together actually right now. I need to stop doing this podcast so make a new business card. Worker B.
Go update your the header. The header on your blog needs to be updated pronto. So Ed has written a number of books and also blogs prolifically and just does a really good job with kind of online connections and different things, which is why I referred to you as a hustler, in case you're wondering where I got that from. But I feel like Ed has a really good sense of balance for writing, promotion, and all those things in a way that feels authentic. So I'm really excited to talk to you tonight. And I want to start with sort of your writing story, like how writing became a part of your life, when you knew you wanted to be a writer, and all those things. So tell us a little bit about your writing life.
Yeah, like, well, I was that kid that was always like writing stories. And, like I filled up my notebook at school and I would get together with my friends after school. We would write stories together. And once I got like through high school, it was like, everyone was telling me like how good I was at writing and all that stuff. But when you've got your family saying you need to become a doctor or a lawyer or something that actually like makes money and has a reputable career, you kind of get kind of shifted away from the creative side of things. And so I just never thought about writing as like a career for me for a long time. And what actually happened is I went to seminary and I just felt like this huge imposter. And I was like, I just don't fit in with any of these people. And I worked at a church and I was like, I don't really like this kind of work. And like being a pastor like looks really horrible. And so about halfway through seminary, I just realized that this is not going to work and I need a plan B. So I started like chipping away at working on a book proposal and a book project with one of my professors. And, kind of did writing on the side. I found a nonprofit job after seminary and started, getting involved in commercial publishing and, sold a couple projects and, just been kind of feeling my way along ever since. And so I think for a while it was like, well, I'll just do writing as this like creative outlet on the side. And then by the time I worked at this nonprofit job for 4 years. My wife was doing a big career transition from a special ed teacher to working on her PhD. And at that time, it was like, well, she's changing everything. Why shouldn't I? And just based on like our career choices, a freelance writer author can travel really well with someone who has to basically follow the PhD job market. So, just one of those happy, things that kind of evolved as seeing her kind of take that leap kind of helped inspire me to take the leap for myself too, to start writing full time.
That's great. Well, I feel like there are very few writers that you'll meet and talk to that don't have some kind of like awesome kind of nerdy story. I feel like, okay, so now I've called you a nerd. I've called you a hustler and a nerd. I should probably just end the interview now and go. But, the idea of like writing stories and getting together with your friends when you're younger, that's a good kind of nerd. I was that kind of nerd as well. But I feel like you're hard pressed to find a writer who doesn't have that kind of story, that didn't know early on. And maybe there are a few, but I feel like most people, when you talk to them, there is some kind of sense that was so early, even if it took a long time to sort of realize that as a full-time dream. And some people still don't have it as a full-time dream, or it changes through time, but writing doesn't ever leave. I think when that is in your blood, it's just there and you can't eradicate it. It will be there, even if you kind of let it be dormant. Well, when you moved into kind of the blogging world, well, when did you move into the blogging world and get into sort of the online writing?
Yeah, it was a little bumpy. So I graduated from seminary, and a friend of mine who I had spent my like high school years meeting for coffee and going to I was in New Jersey during my high school and college years. And so we would go to like a local diner every Sunday morning before church and, hang out and talk about life and theology and stuff. And so he started a blog called In a Mirror Dimly that was like, hey, like, let's start this blog and we can kind of keep our conversations going. And then he started having kids and his job got really busy. And so it kind of just became my thing that I did. And it started out where it's basically just me ranting about church, right? I mean, that's like how a lot of Christian bloggers started out, just like angry about church. And it took a long time before I started to kind of find my own voice. And even as I did that, I realized I needed to get away from the whole theology blog thing, because as much as I love Christianity and what I believe and what I practice, I needed to find just like a way to like just write about anything that was really important to me. So I had seen a bunch of other bloggers do this too, where they switch to a blog that's just like their name, and it's just kind of like, so there's, Addie Zierman, Sarah Bessie, like all these people who they just kind of blog under their names. And so, so I changed it to, just Cyzewski.com and I kind of just write about whatever, whether it's writing and publishing, or if it's prayer, or it's writing and prayer together, like, I can kind of evolve. I kind of, let the blog evolve as my interests evolve. And that's been really helpful for me. Just, finding my own voice, finding what I really care about. And, and that's the cool thing, is once you can get better at writing about what you really care about, then you'll find more readers who are kind of, on the same page with you, and who can track with you. And it's a little bit easier too, I think, to come up with stuff to write about if you have people actively engaging in what you're writing about, and they can kind of see the urgency for it too.
Definitely. It's really hard when you write something and there's just kind of crickets online, because, you do wonder, like, I felt like this should have connected with people. Where are they? And are they just lurking? I have a lot of lurkers on my blog that come and,
oh yeah.
And I love them, because I'm often a lurker on other people's blogs. So I don't judge them, but you do wonder. It's great to have the feedback, I guess, and sort of see a response and comments, or people sharing your work.
Yeah. Social media. Yeah.
Oh yeah, definitely. I know for me, it took me, my blogging sort of beginning was a little bit different. I was about to have a baby. I was not living near my family. At that time, they were halfway across the country. And I was like, I'll just, share pregnancy photos. And also we're planning for a home birth, which seems silly now since I've had like 3 C-sections, but that's a whole other story. But I wanted to sort of explain why I wasn't too crazy for wanting to do that. I was definitely crazy, but not too crazy to do home birth. So that was sort of the blog. I thought it would be my mom and dad reading it, and it was. And then it started to grow, and like kind of as you talked about yours, it evolved with you and mine evolved. But for a long time, I did not see, though I knew I was a writer, I did not see my blog as writing. I really didn't. And I didn't take the time to edit. I didn't plan intentionally. I just sort of wrote, and I feel like I'm a decent writer on my own. So people would, I did attract sort of an audience without meaning to, but not huge. And I look back and I'm, oh man, some of those posts, but it was, like this light bulb going off the day I realized, like, this is writing. It actually is writing, and it could be good writing if I sort of, took the time to think of it in that way. So for you, how do you feel like your kind of online, like your blog writing, how does that fit into sort of the whole portfolio of your other writing as well?
Right. Well, just like a general statement about blogging, like, I think there's, speaking in broad brushstrokes here, there's like the two types of people. There's like, there's you, where it's like, you kind of like are throwing it out there and, whatever. And then there's me, who's like, this is amazing.
Yeah.
So, kind of just taking the blog like so seriously. And like, this is like, I'm going to carefully edit this. And like, like when I started out, I took myself way too seriously.
Yeah.
And it was like this, big creative medium, and that was new, and we were, changing the world, So
of course you were. You had a blog. You're changing the world.
Blog. I know. So yeah, like anything that like people caricature about like bloggers back then, it was probably me. Yeah, like for me, I went to blogging as really like a lifeline, a creative outlet that I felt like it was just a different form of writing, where you can get stuff out there and get immediate feedback, and you can travel really far, really fast. There's just a lot of really cool stuff about blogging that I took to right away, and I really see it as like this place where you can test out like any idea, in a really, really good first draft. So like I'll usually let my blog posts develop over the course of a couple days or weeks or whatever, so that, when it's by the time it's up on my site, it's been, worked on a little bit, at least, if not, a couple rounds of revisions. And, and then when, just based on how people respond, that kind of gives me a clue about, okay, like I should keep exploring this, or, maybe this could be a short ebook, or this could be a longer book. And, and the books that I've published, those have been the ones that I've, gotten the strongest responses from readers, or people send me personal notes or whatever. Like, you get that feedback, and that kind of gives you a direction for your book, instead of like laboring on this thing, and like any book you work on, you should do any kind of, like, you have some research into what's out there and what people are interested in and where the people are who are going to read it. Like, you should do all that. You shouldn't just write a book and just hope people like it. Like, you need to do research, but I think blogging can do some of that for you.
Yeah, I loved blogging when I did it for non-writing too. I really got addicted and I was writing constantly. But I learned a lesson about, I'm trying to figure out how to write, so I keep increasing things in my life and trying to figure out the balance. And I want to talk to you about that in a sec because you have a lot to say. But I learned a really important lesson about editing because I do edit now. However, I've started writing posts in Evernote at the gym because right now this is my situation. It's summertime. I have 4 kids, ages 7 and under, and I'm the primary person who's with them. And I am with them most of the time, all day long. And I want to like my family, and I can't write and also like them. And so, that's why I stay up so late at night and those kinds of things, or write when they're in school. But I've been writing in Evernote like when I'm at the gym. And so I'm on like an elliptical machine typing onto my little phone. But B, Evernote, because it's on my phone, picks up the autocorrect that my phone does naturally, so you actually even noticed and put a very funny and welcomed comment on my last post about a misspelling I had, but there were like 5. I got more comments than that. I misspelled my husband's name because my phone, his name is Rob, and my phone apparently likes Ron better than Rob. And because clearly that's a more, it's a very common name, Ron, and very, people use that and love that more than Rob. I don't know.
Yeah, Ron Swanson. Yeah.
Ron. Yeah, I guess that's why. My phone's a Parks and Rec fan at heart. Yeah. I'm learning a lot more about editing. I'm like, man, I used to not edit at all. I would just type a post and there it goes. Now I'm trying to edit, and because I'm doing Evernote, and then I think it was a day where I had all the kids and I was like, I'm still going to get this post up. And so I'm actually publishing it with the kids climbing on top of me. And this is what happens. So editing, it's just important. But I have found that it's a great medium, and I think I love it more now than I did then. But I wish I knew then what I know now, because I've been blogging for like 10 years, and I'm like, I could be in a very different place right now. I think if I had realized the possibilities of blogging and really embraced it more for writing. But
no, I get that totally.
Yeah,
I've had many of the same thoughts.
But yeah, I really enjoy the online writing, and I think I like hearing that it informs some of your other writing as well. I think that's a great sort of way to look at it, as a way to kind of feel out how people respond. And you have also, in addition to, blogging and doing other writing as well, your writing that you have published, you have done both indie and commercial, which is very interesting. So I guess you're a hybrid. Can we call you a hybrid hustler?
You can.
Yeah.
I also have a bionic arm that I type with. Yeah.
Hybrid hustler with a bionic arm. You're going to sell millions of books this year if you use that as your sort of marketing plan. Well, what has kind of been your experience then with the indie and commercial? I'm not going to say versus, because I don't think they always have to be against each other. Let's not do that.
Yeah.
But together, like what has your experience been? And also, before you answer, I'm going to link to your blog anyway in the show notes, but you had a great post I just read about indie writers being control freaks, which I loved. So I'm sure, you may mention that as well, but tell me about that experience doing both.
Yeah. Well, keep in mind that my first book was published in 2008 with NavPress, back when NavPress was a actual entity. And, that was back when it was like, I have a blog, and they were like, oh, you have a platform. Like, they didn't they didn't really care too much about the numbers. I think like my numbers were not great, but they were enough, I think, and like, if you were releasing a book, it was like, a blog tour was like the cutting edge thing that like no one was doing,
Oh, like 2008, how we miss you.
Yeah. 2008. So this is back when it was like really exciting to get like a free book before like everyone started giving you crappy PDFs to review. So anyway, so it was really different back then, and I had no idea what I was doing. My publicist got fired 6 weeks before the book released.
Ooh.
So I was completely just on my own. She had laid some groundwork and gotten the book out to like Publishers Weekly and some radio shows and blogs and podcasts and things like that. But it's basically like managing like blog tours and things like that on my own. Just kind of feeling my way along, and I had no idea about the scale of what it takes to sell enough books for like a commercial publisher. Like the scale is insane. Even for someone like me who had a very like entry level standard new author advance, and they say like you need to like spend about 2 years building your platform, and I've been doing that, but I just hadn't been doing it at the pace and at the numbers that, are necessary. So I wish I kind of known back then, just how much I had to do, because, editors and publicists get up at writing conferences and they're like, you need to, bring your platform to the publisher and you need to sell the books. And it was like, well, yeah, I'll do that. No problem. But it was just an incredible amount of work, and it still didn't sell well enough for them to want to honor my second book contract. And, and so when there were changes at the publisher, theological differences on certain issues related to the book. And so the second book with them got canceled. So I spent a long time just trying to, get a publisher to notice me, basically just blogging like crazy and trying to build social media. And I don't think I knew how to use social media. I didn't know how to use email. I didn't know how or why people buy books or what it takes to get people to buy a book. And, I just released a bunch of books with different publishers, and none of them sold incredibly well. Some of my latest ones have sold better, but along the way I started experimenting with independent publishing, and at first in 2010 when I first started, it was like, this is a tremendous amount of work and everything's buggy and awful and I hate it. And now that we have things like Scrivener where you can just write and output like a book really easily in multiple formats, and you have places like Noise Trade where you can give away for free and get email addresses, and it's just a lot easier. And so I'm still open to the possibility of commercially publishing, but the amount of pressure that comes with it versus releasing a book independently is just night and day. I feel like with publishing, like I understand every aspect of the business, and I think that there really are just lots of really fantastic people, but it is a system where basically, if they take a chance on a new author and that author doesn't perform well within a year, you have basically a year to get your sales up. And if you don't, then you're basically damaged goods for that publisher and for most other publishers too. And you think about any other profession where it's you have internships and you have promotions, things like that. This is a career where you have 1 year to really nail your book sales, and you have to, so if anything, you can't afford to not independently publish and make all your mistakes first, before working. Yeah. So if you're brand new to it, I don't know, if I was starting out again today, without anything commercially published, it makes a lot more sense to start out independently publishing instead of trying to get a book deal and then realizing, I have no idea what I'm doing and this thing's going to tank and I'll never get a book contract ever again.
That is so scary, and the kind of amount of pressure. And, it's not like writers have this awesome thick skin that comes naturally to us. When our things don't do well and people have to kind of point that out, and, it's well, that's great. Thanks. Just, just what I needed to keep my writer's, tender ego ready to do work, right? That's not helpful either. But do you feel kind of as I was listening, I was just wondering, do you feel like the promotion was I know it was a different time, but when you were doing sort of the commercial publishing versus the independent, was there a huge difference in promotion? Because I think a lot of people assume that publishers will do that for you, and I don't think they do, mostly. Yeah,
well, so there's a couple of things. The first thing you have to keep in mind that there's different tiers of authors, so yeah. They're the authors who will get the media tours and the press releases and all this stuff, and will be kind of set up for them, and they'll have end caps in bookstores, and publishers do stuff to sell books, there's no doubt about it, but maybe not my books. And even if they do things to sell books, there's no guarantee that it's going to work. In general, are those tactics effective? And then even if they are effective for some people, are they going to be effective for me and for my book? And so, when I started out in publishing in 2008, definitely the tactics were very different. It was getting out press releases, getting blog tours, getting people to tweet about it. And I think that people didn't realize that people don't usually buy books through tweets and social media unless there's a discount or a special deal or some kind of you have to kind of sweeten the pot. And so back then it was just get people to tweet about it and they'll buy it, and so you're okay, I will amass a Twitter following. And so, there's a lot more information about those kinds of things. I don't think people were as aware of just how effective email is. And, people were still trying, I was still trying to line up in-person events. I was trying to do, magazine articles. Magazine articles do nothing to sell books. They're, maybe for a couple of people for a really controversial issue or something really niche focused, but for general Christian living books I write, I landed all these magazine articles and they did nothing. I did radio interviews. They did nothing. And it's a shame because there are lots of publishing blogs out there still saying to do all that stuff, and you need to put a bunch of caveats, just to say well, here are a couple of examples where this may work, and then everyone else, it's not going to work.
Do you subscribe to Tim Grohl?
Are you baiting me with a joke or?
No. I feel like you are, but then I know some of you. I mean, that's who I'm thinking of because he has this whole thing about people just lying about this is just he flat out said it in his book. They're just lying. They're lying. Yeah. That's not how promotion works, and they're lying. Yeah. The end.
Yeah. No, I am a big Tim Grohl fan. He actually reading his book, Your First 1,000 Copies, was he kind of caught me at a really low point where my Christian Survival Guide book had come out, and I think it had sold well enough. The publisher is happy. I haven't seen the final sales numbers yet from the first year, if you can believe it, even though it came out last August. But I still haven't. I haven't seen. I guess I won't see the sales numbers until January.
Weird.
But they seem happy. But in any case, I was kind of at this point where I just didn't know what to do next with my career, and a couple of projects I had pitched to a couple select publishers hadn't been accepted. And I read his book, and it was this light bulb went on for me with publishing, where it's his deal is, marketing is you make lasting connections with people and you're relentlessly helpful. And that's it. Just be helpful. Find a way to connect with people long term and then just be helpful to them. That really kind of turned the light on for me, instead of trying to get in front of these huge audiences or trying to use getting these celebrity bloggers or tweeters to promote my book. Just take control of the situation, do what you can, not what you can't, and just help people. And that kind of gave me a path forward. And I share his stuff all the time, and people accuse me of working on commission for him. A newsletter readers say can you link to something else other than this guy?
Well, and that's why I even asked, because I feel like he's the person, he's on every radar. And, these worlds become really insular, they're these giant social media worlds, but I feel like I tend, you tend to connect with somebody who connected with somebody else who connected with somebody else, and then you're all kind of tied to these common people. So yeah, right. He's on all my radar. So that's why I asked, because I'm hearing, okay. I've read his book, but then I don't remember who introduced me to him either, or how, it could have been you through something you did or somebody else. Because I'm just in this deep, awesome abyss of social media sometimes. Right. It's an awesome abyss. I love it in there. Chamber. Just diving on in, and then I'll come out a couple hours later if I can. Well, so you mentioned that book, which I'll link to in the show notes, but I feel like you have done a really good job of sort of being creative in finding your own ways to authentically connect. So what are some of the sort of practical applications for how you have connected with readers in an audience and grown that platform?
Right. Well, so I started a newsletter, I don't know when, back in 2009. I just took everybody in my email address book and dumped them into a spreadsheet. I was you're my email list now. Totally.
Congratulations.
Yeah. I sent them an email saying hey, if you don't want to be on this email list, just reply unsubscribe. And it was this wall of unsubscribed replies.
Oh, that's the worst.
But rookie mistake. So, but anyway, so I didn't realize how important that was. So I used to try to get blog subscribers or social media followers. And now I just really try to get people to sign up to my newsletter. And I send these little notes twice a month. And it's just, things that I've been thinking about, what I'm learning. I share little snippets of upcoming books. And it's really just a chance to be kind of speak frankly, look a little bit more off the record. And I have found that's been so really like a really fun, life-giving thing for me. And that's, it's thanks to Tim Grahl, that it just feels like I'm kind of authentically being myself. Like I would probably send out these emails anyway, just because I think it's a cool way to interact with people and help people. And my newsletter subscribers like write back to me and ask for my feedback on things. And I think like I've shared enough about like, what's appropriate, what's not appropriate from my own lessons and experiences that they even like respect like boundaries and say like, hey, like I know you're really busy. I've written this book. Do you read the first couple of pages and give me some feedback? And it's like, of course I'll do that. Sure. That's, I can spend 5-10 minutes and just kind of give you my, so that's been really cool doing that. And from that, I've been, on top of that, I do my blog, but the blog is something where it's like, that's a way to reach some new people and share it on social media. But, really I try not to spend a lot of time on social media. I use Buffer a lot with like Pocket Feedly and kind of keep cycling articles through there. But I just try to like interact with people who interact with me. But, I try to put most of my energy into thinking about blog posts, thinking about books, and then thinking about newsletters. And that's kind of like the three things I have to think about creating. And then they all kind of overlap and intersect, right? Because it's, the blog is where I test out book ideas. And then when I have a book idea, that provides stuff I can share in my newsletter. And so it all kind of, it kind of becomes self-sustaining once you start investing in it.
And I think that's great because those are all sort of more long form content, right? So like for writers, any of those three, like the books, the blog posts, and the newsletter, those are writing. And while I enjoy the challenges of trying to write something on Twitter, because it can be a challenge, right? For that 140 characters or less, really, right, is what they encourage, less. But,
yep.
I do find that a great challenge, but I look forward to figuring out what that content is going to be for that weekly email, that I sent out, because I want it to be something that's not on the blog, not somewhere else, and I want it to be, I want people to open it, like I want it to be something that is content people, they get it and they open that. They see my name and they want to see what I have to say. They want to read it, and still trying to figure out what that is. Cause I feel like, we all have to figure out who the audience is too, that we're writing for. And sometimes that's different. Like the people sometimes that subscribe to my newsletter are different than the ones subscribing or not subscribing to my blog, but reading my blog. So
I can tell you actually what it is, I think.
Tell me what it is.
It's the like, what is she into next? Like, that's what it is with your newsletter. That's why I open it.
Because you never know, right? Never know.
Right. But it's like you've like crafted this image of yourself, either intentionally or unintentionally, that like you're gonna like get into something that's gonna be worth sharing. Like, you know what I mean? Like, and if I heard Ira Glass. This is Ira Glass here. So this is like one step down from God as far as writing and storytelling goes. Ira Glass is saying that the whole key to the success of This American Life is making people ask the question, what happens next, right? Like that's like, if you listen to This American Life, the podcast or on radio, like you always want to know, like, well, what's this person going to do, like in this situation? And the way that they tell their stories, they make you wonder and keep you guessing. And so like your newsletter, it's like, what is she getting into next? That's the thing for me. That's why I open it.
Well, good. Okay. You're helping me sort of nail it down. Cause you can't see that stuff for yourself sometimes. Right.
Right.
I mean,
yeah, absolutely.
Okay. So you're giving me new focus to go on, because I really do. I mean, this is, and I'm sure people listening out there as well, like sometimes you just wonder, I hear this question all the time. What do I put in my newsletter? And a lot of people sort of don't put anything. They'll sign up for something like MailChimp, but then use it just to do an RSS of their blog. And I actually spoke with Amy Lynn Andrews, who writes the newsletter, which is my absolute hands down favorite newsletter to get. No offense to you, Ed, because yours is great as well. But hers is just amazing. And I actually look forward to it. It comes Saturday mornings. I look forward to opening it and seeing what she has in there, because it really is that good. And I was talking with her about email, and something she said was, if you have people who want to read it, it doesn't really matter what you're sending, right? Like if they want to read your blog posts and email, that's great. And kind of giving that freedom to figure out what works for you and what works for your audience. Because there is this pressure, and there are all these, I feel like people now are talking so much about email that there's this perfect formula that everybody spouts online about what your email needs to be and the freebie that has to come along with it. But there's a formula that everybody says works. And whenever you can get something down to a formula, that's when people smell it and they're not interested, and then it has to change. So anyway, I feel like you have done a really good job of being creative in the ways that you ask people to sign up and how you ask them. You can find that in any of your books. Or most of the books you buy digitally of yours, you have that in the front pages somewhere. And then also on your Amazon page, you also have the sign up link right there and your author page on Amazon.
You did stalk me really good. Wow.
I mean, this is what you have to do if you're going to talk to people so you don't say things that are untrue or call them insulting names. Oh, wait. Or at least you just do one of the two, right? So I made my one mistake, but I have to be nerd. I'm totally, you got me on that. But you have a great way of asking people to sign up, and a way of sort of phrasing that's, as writerly entrepreneur people would say, it's good copy, to get people clicking in there. But it is kind of an art. And I think if everybody just does that formula, we can't all do the formula. Like now it's going to have to change. Right. Like a freebie, I've got, so when my computer crashed, I realized I, spent time kind of looking at what files were on that computer. And then I have another computer that I broke earlier this year, which anyway, I should not have a computer. I need a typewriter. And I was looking through that computer because the keyboard doesn't work, but you can kind of scroll around. And so the first computer crashed on a night I'd planned 4 hours worth of work. And then I was really mad because I had 4 hours to work, which is unheard of. And so I got my old computer with no keyboard and was like, well, what can I do on this? Like what it was on here. And I found in the download section, like no fewer than 20 downloads of books that I had gotten for signing up for people's email lists that I had never read.
Wow.
Yeah. And I was like, okay, clearly like there are too many of these. And sometimes I just sign up to see, because I like studying things. I want to see what people do. Like when I sign up for your email, what happens? What's the next step?
Is there a picture of a rabbit? Is there,
Yeah, there's fun stuff. That's what you have, right?
Yeah.
And I went through and signed up for my email list to see all the different screens because of the anti-spam laws. There's like 80 options for things you have to do. There's a screen that says you're almost done, and then there's a screen that says congratulations, and those can all just look like the normal screen, but I went in and added crazy pictures to all of mine just to make it interesting. I don't know, to make it at least something that maybe would make them think, I guess, what's she going to do next?
What's she going to do next? Yeah. Is she going to send the next one like the typewriter? I mean,
you never know. I don't know how I would do that, but we'll work on the technology for that. Well, you have one of the books that is probably the first full book of yours that I've read was Pray, Write, Grow. And that book I really love because it's so much about balance, and not just the balance of writing in real life, but the balance of writing and then spirituality and how those things, I hate the word spirituality, but faith. You can use your word as you answer the question, because that's just not my favorite word that makes it sound so unreachable, like this weird, lofty idea. And that's not what I mean at all. Or I don't think that's what you mean either. But balancing sort of the idea of prayer and a spiritual life with writing and how those go together. So I'd love to hear you talk about kind of how that book came about and sort of some of the thoughts that you have about balancing those two things.
Right. Yeah. Well, I mean, the book, I should preface it just by saying that I tried to write the book in such a way that if you aren't someone who is actively practicing a faith, that you could still get a lot out of it. Because I think that the thing is that I've learned that the things I need to do to pray are also the things I need to do to write. That like both of those, like if you can do one, you can develop the other, and that they kind of overlap and help each other and kind of become this life-giving cycle. So you don't necessarily have to even pray, right, to benefit from the book. I mean, I think that there's a lot to be gained through prayer. So I'm a fan. But I'll say, the book started with this thing where I just started like taking walks to get our firstborn son to sleep. And I was trying to, I was still like kind of in workaholic mode. So I was like, well, I'll think of things to write about. I'll pray. I'll do all these things like in my mind, and I'll have like a notebook with me while he's napping on the walk. And I'll stop and write ideas down. It's going to be really productive. And I'm going to like sit down to write, and I'm going to be like really centered and like prayerful, and I'm going to have ideas. And I went to like take a walk, and I turned my podcast off. Sorry. And it was like my brain went into like overdrive, and I was like freaking out about stuff, and I was stressed. And I was realizing that, we kind of live in this society of like noise and distraction. And like, I didn't know how to be alone with my thoughts. And so that kind of started this, journey of sorts. And along the way, I've been praying the divine hours, which are available for free. If you just look up divine hours vineyard online, there's a vineyard church that has them for free online. There's an Examine prayer app that I've been using. And that's just kind of the Examine's like a prayer practice where you ask yourself a series of questions about, am I hopeful or am I discouraged? And what was good today? What was bad? What relationships encouraged me? What relationships discouraged me? When did I fail? When did I love? So yeah, it's a series of questions that helps you enter into prayer with greater self-awareness. And I was finding that like even just like praying with the Examine, like I was coming up with all these like writing ideas too, just kind of processing stuff. So anyway, I realized that this time of self-reflection, of being comfortable with silence, being comfortable being by myself with nothing going on, learning to ask myself questions, these things all kind of helped me become a better writer. And I also became better, not better, but just more aware and focused when I prayed. And I felt like, prayer was a much more effective time. So, in Pray Write Grow, I talk about how they just work together and just give ideas and stories and anecdotes about how that's played out in my own life.
Well, I feel like it's really encouraging for writers just in general. Like you said, I don't think it has to be, and coming from a background of being a Christian as well, maybe I'm not the poster child for saying, you could read it and not be a believer, but I tend to read with that lens a little bit more. I mean, I would not say I'm necessarily a Christian blogger or a Christian writer, although I've written some of the things that I write, or I feel like I either write gritty fiction that is not in any way, shape, or form publishable under a Christian house, or I write like straight up nonfiction that's like overtly Christian. Like there's no, there's a big separation there. But I look at a lot of things through the lens of not just being in that Christian bubble. So I would say that people definitely could read that book who are interested in writing and get so much out of it. Like I feel like it's very challenging to me in the right ways. And so refreshing too in terms of something that encourages you to write, but isn't just about the nuts and bolts. Because I found for me, balance is one of those things that it comes in with this idea of, real life and writing. And it comes in for me in a big way. And with this podcast, with the balance of the nuts and bolts of building a platform and also the sort of passion side of inspiration for writing and creating. And those things, if you don't want anyone to ever read your work, then you don't need to worry about the nuts and bolts of platform. Right? Like you could just write and be totally happy. But if you do want an audience, whether that's an audience, like a stadium sized audience or like a living room size audience, if you want some kind of audience, then in some shape or fashion, you have to think about the practical sort of platform tools and the ways that you can use them. So I think your book is refreshing because it's practical, but it's also kind of on that inspiring side of things, if that makes sense.
Yeah, thank you.
And another sort of kind of talking about balance, and I reminded myself that I wanted to talk to you about this as well from earlier. But, one of the questions, you have a smaller Facebook group for, I think, called contemplative writers, which is a word I always feel like I say wrong, like I'm missing a letter when I say it. But it's a really nice little active group of people talking about writing and life. And one of the questions you brought up was this idea of the balance between sort of making a living or making money writing and then writing for the love of it. So, how, and is that something that a project that you're working on currently, and what sort of thoughts might you have on that balance?
Yeah. I mean, I've been all over the place on this. So like when I started out, I started trying to write magazine articles. And for about a year, and it was not successful. It was not good. And so then I had to kind of reinvent myself and think about like what I could do. And I was like selling books for some guy on Amazon just to help, bring in money. Just kind of looking for anything for work while I got myself on my feet. And I started writing for like a welding blog, for ghostwriting for people who were writing for like really popular sites like pro blogger. I was like a ghostwriter for this guy who was submitting stuff there. Like just doing anything to pay the bills. And, I still take on freelance clients, whether it's like editing, coaching. I do newsletters. I do some website copy still, but I definitely do, make some of my money, a good, at least a chunk of my money through books, and it changes every year. But what I've found is obviously so here's the thing, for me, I never knew what to do with myself. I never knew what to do for work. And it's clear that writing is kind of both my passion and my marketable skill. Mm-hmm. That, it's both something that I do just to process things and to think. And sometimes just writing about something I've been thinking about is really therapeutic, and I can kind of just leave it on my computer and it's just done. And I got those ideas out and they'll stop bugging me now. And at the same time, it's I think I have kind of a knack for writing just for work. And, obviously if I had my say, I would just work on my own books all the time. That would be just what I did. But it's fortunate that I can, make make at least a part of our family's income. We're a dual income household, so it's not all on me. If it was, we'd be in trouble, I think, because writing's tough if you're the only income earner. But, I've been able to bring in a decent amount of money every year just by doing website copy and some work for clients and book editing. So, I would just say to people, if you need to make ends meet, make ends meet. Don't, don't get this idealistic notion of you're going to go all in and publish books and you're going to, scrape it out. And I've read books. There's those guys who did that write, publish, repeat book. Those guys left their jobs and just went for it. And there's some really I just kind of hated them in the first couple chapters of that book because they kept making jokes about their wives being stressed out. And it's yeah, of course.
Oh my gosh.
What's wrong with you? So anyway, God bless them. They're doing great. They're making a lot of money and they're, working hard. But I would say, try to find some kind of balance where you can carve out. When I started freelancing, I would get up at 5 a.m. to do stuff, my own stuff. This is all pre-kids, by the way, pre-kids. Now that we have kids, that sounds crazy. But, find a way to keep that creative stuff going and see if you can kind of start shifting, and that's kind of where I'm at right now in my career, where I'm starting to shift more time and energy towards the book writing stuff, because independently publishing, if you can do noise trade to get, new email addresses for your list. You can do Kindle Direct. You can use Draft to Digital to upload to other services, and you can do price promotions. You can do sales through BookBub and all the other different discount book services out there. There's just some really simple, accessible tools that you can do to get your book out there. And with Pray Write Grow, it was I had a nice little email list, but I'm still not a household name, so I made it cheap. It was pre-order it. For 99 cents. And, 500 people did. And that got a lot of attention on the Amazon bestseller list. And I got a lot of sales and, things kind of stuck around for, a couple weeks. And I still get a trickle of sales every day. And it's it's super exciting to see that, I'm actually making money every month now just from the books that I write. And so, if you can do that, great. But I think that you need to do a slow build and not try to try to push it for a year and try to make it big. And, from my own experience, it's, you're probably just going to make a lot of mistakes.
Well, mistakes are how we learn, though, right? I guess.
But you need as a safety, you need that, have that freelance income, get something reliable, like copywriting or whatever, build that up, to kind of support yourself so that you can make your mistakes. And then, that's kind of, yeah.
Yeah, I'm just still thinking about the wives being stressed out and them laughing about that. Cause oh my goodness, there's nothing, it is really stressful, especially, if you're a single person, you might have a little more, freedom in that to just be hey, I'm going to just dive off into this, world that I'm really passionate about. But when you're married and you're diving and taking somebody with you, it's a little,
right.
It's not a joke, it can be awesome. And, I remember my first year of marriage, my husband was working at the YMCA, as like a program director. And that year, he worked at 2 different YMCAs that were opening. So he was doing all the like opening promotion, crazy stuff. And everybody was working like probably 60 to 80 hours a week for, I don't know how much he was making, like 30,000 something, nothing worth 80 hours a week. It was so miserable. And I remember I couldn't find a job. Like I'm not very hireable. I worked in ministry for a couple of years, and then nobody would hire me. I was like, I don't know what skills I even have. I mean, I got a degree, but that's about it. And so I was not working. I don't know what I did. We didn't have kids. I should have been, how could I not have written 30 books in that time?
Right.
But in any case, I wasn't writing books. I was wasting time apparently, or making dinner or cleaning the house. And he came home one day and he'd been complaining and like, I need to find a new job. I need to find a new job. And he came home one day and he looked at me and he kind of got a little teary and he was like, I can't do this anymore. And it was at that moment I was like, quit right now. I mean, like whatever it takes, like there's no job, worth like, cause I think I'd just been sort of writing it off, like, cause there is the balance. Like you have to be practical. Like we're married, we have an apartment and it's super small, but it still costs money for us to live here and things like that. Yeah. But when you get to that point where, your husband's coming home in tears because of the YMCA, which is just ridiculous, but it was bad. I mean, it really was, that's when it's time, but it is scary. And when you're doing that, with somebody else and there are those financial things, that balance is just really hard to find. Right. And I think, everybody's dream, the ideal is to do what you love and make the income you want, but that just really isn't always possible. And kind of like I said with the email list where there's this perfect formula. And if you go online and look, you find 20 blogs telling you that. You can also find the same number of blogs, more than 20, lots of blogs, telling you how to make a full-time income doing what you love. And you just have to work kind of hard and also buy my e-course or join my membership site.
The badge on your blog.
Yeah. Join my community because all the people that did have now, they're making a full-time income. Yeah. And I will say, I do personally know bloggers who make between $5,000 and $30,000 a month. Yes, a month doing their blog. And it's possible there is money out there, but everybody can't. I mean, like, I don't know where all the money would come from if every blogger made that much a month. Like, there'd be no economy. Like, there's not enough money for that. There's not enough of an audience for us all to do that. And so, I wish we could all make that perfect living. But I think finding the happy place where you make enough, whether that's through the number one passion or through, kind of like a side, you're doing writing, right, the freelance stuff. But it's great to see also your book sales, like the things you're passionate about actually bringing in, those dollars. That's great as well. So my last question for you then, after I've kept you on way long, this has been really great and helpful. I really appreciate you taking the time, but I want to know what is inspiring you right now in your life.
Yeah. So I've been just reading a bunch of books by Richard Rohr, and I couldn't even tell you necessarily which ones exactly because they all kind of sound the same now. But he's a Franciscan, I think he's a priest, but he just writes a lot about prayer and kind of, I guess the latest one I've been reading Falling Upward and Eager to Love. And, I feel like Eager to Love is all about St. Francis of Assisi and his wisdom. And I feel like everybody wants like St. Francis on their side, kind of like everyone wants Jesus on their side, like everyone's like, well, we're with Francis, obviously. And, one of the things about Francis that he talks about is just, the book's titled Eager to Love, right? Like that was like his posture toward the world. It was a largeness, an openness, and I think it was redemptive. It was transformative. He talks about Francis being a conservative in a true sense of the word, that he conserved what was like good about the church in his day while still prophetically challenging it. But he prophetically challenged it not with like calling it out and attacking it, but like by radically modeling, something so different that like you had to just kind of stop, and like the critique was inherent in what he did, but he did it in such a way that it was like loving. And like, I can kind of like see where I'm going if we are on Twitter, right? And I have spent, more than enough of my time, going after different groups or people or whatever on my blog or reacting to things. And, I still want to be provocative. I still want to talk about important things and hard things. I don't want to shy away from having, the hard conversations on my blog. So, if you look at my blog, I'm perfectly happy to do that. I think it's appropriate to a certain degree. But, like Roar's writing, like where it hits me like right now is just that he calls it like non-dualistic thinking, that, instead of dividing in like us versus them, it's that, having that larger love and seeing people who have a need for redemption, and knowing that we also ourselves need to be redeemed as well. And so, that's kind of been where I'm at lately. It just, and like I said, it's prayer and writing for me, it's kind of the same thing. So it's like, how does my writing reflect that? How does my writing have a redemptive focus? And how can I model something bigger and larger and more open to people, so that, we can kind of, other people who read it, even if they maybe disagree with me, they would feel able to engage it and feel welcomed and feel understood and heard, maybe while still being brought to a challenge to change, to be different. And so that's kind of, he's kind of my main thing right now. I've got, a couple of his books open on my various e-readers and tablets, and, I highly recommend Immortal Diamond. Like that was I read that book while I was working on Pray, Write, Grow. And it's just all about identity, and obviously it's a Christian perspective. He has a very universalistic flavor and agenda at times, but I feel like he gets right the idea of all the false selves, like all the different things that we can use to feed our false selves, as opposed to basically like kind of the like Job saying, like, naked I came to this world, naked I'll depart. Like, your identity is being loved by God, like that's it. And so like anything else that you use to identify yourself is just something you've constructed, like it's false. Just that for me as a writer, where you're just so tempted to look at like stats and readers, and I used to get really, really touchy about Facebook and like who liked stuff or who shared stuff, or were the were my friends enthusiastic about my stuff the way that they were enthusiastic about someone else's stuff in our circles, or just jealousy, envy, bitterness, all that stuff. And so Roar has really helped me kind of just let go of a lot of that stuff, and just accept that my identity is being loved in God, and that I have to just be faithful in my work. I have to be redemptive. That doesn't mean I can't work toward changing things, but it means that I need to work in such a way that the goal isn't to destroy someone, but the goal is to redeem and change, and to realize we're, in the end, we're kind of on the same team, basically. So, yeah.
Well, that sounds very inspiring, especially for those of us who are writers or bloggers are on this online world, and it's so easy to get sucked into the numbers game, or like you were saying, like who shares what, I mean, not that I ever do that. I'm sure other people do. No. I don't, never.
You've shared 3 of my things this week. I was kidding.
Whoa, that's probably true. But I mean, do you have a spreadsheet somewhere? You do, don't you?
It's a dartboard, actually. So.
And then, a dartboard. I was going to say, and then you share exactly 3 pieces of my stuff. That's the ratio. The formula, folks, for internet domination. Keep a spreadsheet and or dartboard. But
course is coming out.
There, yeah.
And it's worth over $100, I assure you.
Yes, so that's coming up next is our course on spreadsheets and how to sell books. Well, this has been a great conversation. I've really enjoyed it, and I think there's so much that people can take away, whether you're a Christian or not a Christian, whether you're writing books or blogs, from sort of your experiences that you've had. And so I really appreciate you taking the time.
Oh, it's been a pleasure. Thanks so much for having me.
In listening to that interview, I feel like Ed made a lot of mistakes for us so that we don't have to make those same mistakes now. We can go make our own. I make a lot daily, so I will definitely share those with you as well. But I feel like I learned so much from hearing his experience in publishing, and also just in chatting about social media and in promotion and email list and all of these different things. So I've got things I need to go implement. For more from this interview, head over to creativewriting.com/010, because this is our 10th episode. You can find links to Ed on social media, as well as his books, which are on Amazon and Noise Trade. I'm also going to link to some of the things we talked about, like Roar, which was inspiring him, and a few other great links like Tim Grahl. Thanks so much for supporting the show by listening. I hope that if you're listening on iTunes, you will leave a review. That is so helpful for me to know what you guys think, and it also helps people find my podcast in the wild world of podcasting. So please leave a review. Please come back again and listen. Leave a comment in the show notes and let me know what you like, what you don't like, what you want to hear about next. So I'm so glad you're here listening, and I hope you have an inspired week.